say, we would like all of you to consider having one visit right now. We encourage it. We know that transitions are hard. We know that the vast majority of residents who kill themselves are in the first 3 months of internship.
Really?
Transitions, and it makes sense. Transitions are hard. You don't know where you are. You have an increased level of responsibility for patient care, for life and death, where you didn't have that before. And you oftentimes have means to kill yourself. You have prescription power. You can get lethal things with that. We set up a situation without the support. And if we tell people that that's a risk, one of the things that you hear is, well, we don't want to scare them. We don't want them to, be a downer as we're starting.
Like they're already scared. They're already down.
They're already terrified. So, in that light, what we do, not only do we put them in a new situation, they rotate every 3 to 4 weeks to another group of people. So in emergency medicine, you might be in pediatric ER, and then you may go to the ICU, and then you may do OB. And it's a whole different group of people that don't know you, especially the first year, that you have to start all over again, trying to figure out who to trust, who you don't trust, what your knowledge is on a new subject. You just got feeling okay in the ICU, and now they send you to OB, to deliver babies. And you get to start all over again, not knowing anything and not knowing anybody, again and again and again and again, the whole first year. Personally, I think it's amazing we don't have more people being stressed out with that. And the reason why is it's a limited time frame. It's an intense thing, and people and other residents will be like, yeah, I was like that last year. Yeah, I was like that last year. And we have another spike going out of residency where you don't have that camaraderie.
Is that into fellowship or into whatever permanent placement they would fund?
Permanent placement, you're the only new guy in a practice. Whereas in internship, all of you are new guys. You may not have, your class of 12, you're all new. You have somebody right there. But if you go into a new practice, you are the new guy.
It's isolation in a different form. It's not the traditional form of isolation where you're literally alone. It's a psychological isolation of sorts where you don't know, like you said, who to trust, but you don't have a rapport established, and really very little time to establish it anyway. It's like we need to pull these people off of islands somehow and create a network of support so they can get through. If you're listening to this and maybe you've had a similar experience, because I can only analogize it to some of the false start careers I've had, but there's usually a probationary period following a training period, and you can, if you don't like it, you can quit. Well, in medical school now, you accumulate $200,000 to $300,000, $400,000 of student loan debt. You can't just quit because nothing else pays you that well that wouldn't require you to start over fresh and accumulate even more debt in the training period. So I get it. I get the unique pressures to this particular occupation. That's overwhelming.
And if we started this like EAP, people that do work like you do and understand these pressures and the issues with transition and isolation, then can provide a framework early on this is what EAP is, this is what we offer, these are some of the challenges that you might face, and if you do, we're here to help because we have seen this before. So then when the crisis happens, you give the wrong medicine to a patient, that you're like, I remember how to do this, and it was okay, and they gave me good advice. Then you've created a pathway where there is transparency of the process and consequences. One of the things that I think is a great tool available right now, safety planning. Brown and Stanley safety planning, because I'm emergency medicine and words, you can use different words to mean the same thing. As we saw with second victim syndrome, I call it a personal crisis management plan, because safety planning is a little soft for ER, but personal crisis management plan sounds better. It's the same thing, that when you have a crisis, who are those people you are going to call on? Have you talked to them and say, hey, if I call, there might be a time that I need to talk to you. Now, I don't care if you use a code word. And if you say pineapples when they pick up the phone, that this is the time that bad things happen, because you can't even articulate the other words of that it was an awful thing.
Yeah.
Fine. Do you need distractions? Do you need mantras? I'm a big believer in mantras, that everybody goes through this. Everybody, the words that you tell yourself, you will believe. Choose good mantras and choose good rules. We have lots of rules in medicine. Never let go of the guide wire. That is, that there's guide wires that you put into like blood vessels, and you don't want to let go of it as you put a catheter over it, because if you let go of it, the guide wire and the catheter may all go in together, and then one, you look like an idiot when they read the x-ray. Two, the patient has to go through things. Three, your supervisor will be talking to you because this is an unintended event, adverse event. So you never let go of the guide wire. Well, maybe it is you never kill yourself when you're drunk or intoxicated on other substances. You never kill yourself if you haven't had 80 hours of sleep. You never kill yourself unless you talk to somebody else first.
Yeah.
And when you hit that point, it's like, these are the 3 rules.
I love it.
We can do that right now.
We can. And I love your reference to the EAP. In a world where, and I try to say this, I try to crowbar it into every podcast because I don't know who listens and when. But I believe that mental health provision, care provision, is the only discipline under the entire medical umbrella where insurance does not, commercial insurance, Medicaid insurance, state insurance, doesn't matter. Insurance does not cover preventative care. We've got preventative care in every other medical arena except mental health. So there is no, pop the hood, check the belts and hoses twice a year, 3 times a year visit. EAP is one of those ways where you can do that. It's paid for by the employer. You don't go through insurance. It's free. You don't need a diagnosis. And that's one of the damnable miseries of it, is that in order to come see me, for me to bill your insurance, I have to have a diagnosis on you, which means you have to meet criteria, which means you essentially have to be broken enough to receive care. And that's disingenuous to all the things that we're talking about with regard to prevention. You want to prevent bad things from happening, then you better pay up for preventative care. And this is an investment, it's yet another, I guess, instance to illustrate how our culture, our society has failed to invest in mental wellness. It's like, we can't see it. It must not exist. So I love the EAP. I love the mantras. Those are things that hospitals, corporate institutions can implement if they get serious about it, and really right down to the individual education programs. I love that idea too, because I'm a big fan of starting things early. Because by the time you hit residency, chances are really good that your plate's full anyway, and you're not gonna. It's like, here, by the way, go attend this other training. I know you thought you were done with trainings, but like, oh, all right, I'll also squeeze this thing in. While your hair's on fire. Getting it in grad school would be great. If we could do it in 4th grade, that'd be even better. But
yeah. We also did a third thing, because it is hard to talk about suicide. It's like, when do you put that in the conversation? And when there's so many other things competing for didactic sessions, stroke, sepsis, heart attacks, like, where do you put suicide? And how much of it is what we do, or do we have them go see the psychiatrist? Like, how are they going to do it? And we certainly think of it about patients and not so much ourselves. So
you're bulletproof, right? I mean, that's you're the person in the white coat. You're not allowed to get sick.
And institutions like us to be bulletproof. So I'll go to that in a minute. So what we wanted to do was create a time for people to be able to recognize it and talk about it. So we developed this National Physician Suicide Awareness Day during Suicide Prevention Month in September. It's September 17th.
2 years you've been doing that now? Is that right?
Yes, this will be the third one. And we started in emergency medicine and got the emergency medicine organizations together and started talking to other organizations that dealt with training programs, tried to reach out on Twitter and let it go viral. We have a logo that you can use free to get out there. And we found that professional organizations were supportive, but it's been much harder to talk with institutions. Because when you start talking to the people in the C-suite, the administrators, they don't want, they're worried about the optics on talking about perhaps their physicians would kill themselves. And so you can put something up in the physician lounge, but we don't want you to have something in the local paper. And it was surprising to me in how you overcome that. But as we've grown, what we found is it's given an opportunity for it to fit in the curriculum, that we can talk about suicide and physician suicide in particular, and talk about how that experience happened to them. Most people who have been doing this for a while have a story of somebody that they knew who killed themselves, but there's never a good opportunity to talk about it on a normal day.
That's what happened to you. You saw a letter from somebody else, and it essentially gave you permission to acknowledge your own experience.
I had never seen anything like that.
Right. But yet it aligned with you because you were going through it.
Yes, and even with that, it was very, very, very difficult. And it needs practice. It needs practice. This goes back to the Enduring the Inquisition. It was very hard to talk about a lot of things. One of the hardest things for me was to share the MRI of my daughter. I looked at that and I don't understand how anybody can't be horrified. And even in my little community of brain tumor parents, the questions were like, what were her symptoms? And that just talking about that, what were her symptoms? Or the, oh my God, that's gigantic. I had trouble with not knowing what the reaction was going to be and handling it. So if it was bad with the general population, I certainly don't want to do it with doctors. I don't want to reveal my deficiencies in my professional group.
Right.
And the first person I sent it to, I sent by email, was to Chris. This was actually 17 years later. It was a year after I knew him, and I decided if I was going to talk about it, I had to use her MRIs rather than somebody else's, just for the internet. You have to have the permissions that you should. So it's easiest to have the permissions for my daughter. And I sent that, and the time till I got a response, which to me was going to be like, oh my God, that is huge. I said I wanted to use it, and he's like, if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. Like, wow, that is the most grace that you could have on this. And I was overwhelmed with what the response would be, what the questions would be, what the inquisition, and it was amazing. And now that I started to share, other people can share their stories. Right. You see more and more, it's not just me, but other people share their stories. And as we share the stories and get support for this, I think there will be more openness. On the website, if you search NPSA Day, there is, on the opening page, at the bottom, there's logos from all different groups there. And you can scroll down. It's become bigger and bigger and bigger. And I will thank Zephyr Wellness. You'll be able to find them. They're the very last one, thanks to the alphabet.
That's awesome.
It's
Thanks.
right at the bottom is Zephyr Wellness. And we appreciate that support.
Thanks. Hey, I want to be mindful of your time and, and let you get about your day or your evening now that it's 10 o'clock your time. But I do